LECHE Flan. Into my pot, it's on medium heat, I'm going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar. Then we're going to let this caramelize and add some water. You do want to go ahead and watch this so it doesn't burn. The sugar will start to melt. This is my friend Nancy's recipe. It's a lime flavored LECHE Flan. It is so delicious. It's very rich because it uses egg yolks instead of whole eggs, or a few whole eggs and egg yolks, but it is so good. I don't normally like thick, rich custard or flan, but this is an exception. You can see the sugar is starting to melt, and the pot has been on medium heat for about 8 minutes, so it took a little while there. Continue to stir until it's all completely melted. These big chunks will eventually liquefy. Most of the white sugar is now in clumps, and the clumps are starting to melt into liquid. As long as you keep this on medium heat, your sugar will melt quite nicely. This was 1 cup of sugar that I used, and you can see many of the clumps are gone. And I'm going to let this darken just a little bit. There's a more professional way to caramelize or melt the sugar so you don't have any hard pieces on your spoon or along the edges of your pan. But when Nancy makes her flan, it always works. So we're going to stick to her method because it is her recipe. I do have another wooden spoon standing by. Okay, so now, see, it's practically all melted. I'm just going to switch spoons so I don't have the hard sugar on here. And then when you add the water, be careful. So all the little clumps of sugar have melted. Stand back. I've got my new spoon. Let it come down and sizzle. You notice I'm using a deep pan or a deep pot, and then stir. This will all liquefy. And make sure you have your flan pan at the side. I'm just using an 8-inch cake pan that I have, but there are specialty flan molds. So this LECHE Flan recipe, Nancy's recipe, is a Filipino recipe. There we go. Sugar's getting easier to move in the pot. I also have a clean strainer standing by, just in case there's clumps of sugar. So just stir this until it's nice and liquidy. It's getting there. As long as you don't feel any resistance along the bottom of the pot, and you can stir pretty easily. This is ready to get into my pan. Okay, barely any resistance along the bottom of my pot. Okay. I don't see any hard pieces of caramel in my pot, so, well, let's just be sure. got my strainer. I'm going to pour it through here. If you're just, you know, eating this flan for family, I suppose you can skip the strainer. But just in case. And I'll put this in here. Now, remember this is very hot sugar. You need to be careful when you do this. And the pan is getting pretty hot. This particular flan is not more than 1 inch thick. And this pan is very hot now. Whew. You need to be careful. Just use napkin here. And this is my 8-inch cake pan. And I'm just rotating. If I were you, I wouldn't let that puddle of sugar out of your sight. So don't turn it towards you, otherwise you're not going to see it. You might end up burning yourself. So just kind of keep rotating this to cover the rims or the sides of the pan. It's going to thicken up, and this actually needs to set and cool, which can take up to 45 minutes before you fill it with the flan mixture. You must be careful. This is super hot. It didn't take but a few seconds for this caramel sugar to heat this pan. I don't need to come to the very top of this particular pan because it's, like I said, the flan itself is not going to be more than 1 inch thick. So we'll keep rotating this. So we get a good coverage, a thicker coverage on the sides here. Oh, almost slipped out. Nancy has these 2 baking dishes she uses, or she used all the time in Germany, and she still had it. And Nancy O, when you brought it down to my house last summer, I thought she was going to leave one for me. And you know, it's really hard to find some of these baking dishes and cooking supplies that were around 15 years ago. You know, because they come up with newer, more modern versions, but they're not necessarily the best to work with. I've found anyways. I like the older stuff. Okay, you can see the syrup is starting to thicken. When it gets a little bit more thick, I'm going to stop. So we have a pretty layer of sugar at the bottom, and it's not wrinkly and hard. And again, this is an 8-inch cake pan. I'd like to get the oval pans. Now, I've seen some flan recipes where you would, you know, prepare your pan, put your flan in, and then it's steamed. This one is baked in a water bath, and I'll show you what that is later. You basically have a pan that is larger than the flan pan you're using, so that you can pour water around your flan and bake it. You get a creamier, smoother texture because you're somewhat steaming it, right? Than if you were to bake your flan straight in an oven, which I would never recommend because flan is supposed to be nice and smooth and custardy. Okay, we're starting to get nice and thick here. So I'm done rotating this and covering the sides. Here, and I'm just gonna let this kind of settle at the bottom. Nice and even coverage, and then this is gonna sit here. Don't disturb it once you've got the bottom evenly covered with the syrup. So leave it there, let it cool for about 45 minutes, and then we'll fill it. I have 8 egg yolks at room temperature. Then you're going to pour in a can of evaporated milk. And half a can of condensed milk. So this can is 14 ounces, so just half of it. Eyeball it. Okay. And then we'll break up the egg yolks. Now I'm using a whisk so I don't beat too much air into this. If you use an electric beater, you'll get a lot of air in. Doesn't take much to whisk this all together. Hold a strainer over your prepared pan. And then we're going to pour the custard in. You see, if you can see, the bottom of the pan is set. The sugar didn't move around. The strainer will catch any large clumps, especially those big white strands of protein from the egg yolk. Okay. And then you're going to grate the rind of one lime over the top. I love this microplaner. I got it in Germany. Well, I was in Germany and I ordered it from the States. You don't want to grate the lime into your mixture, then pour it in your pan. Otherwise it's going to speckle your custard. So by doing it this way, it stays on the surface. So my oven is preheating at 325 degrees. Okay, I have my bigger pan with my flan in the middle. Slide that in to the center. And I've got my water, which I'm going to pour just at the edge of the pot. I want it to go about 1/2 to 3/4 the way up without getting water inside the flan. At 325, you're going to bake this for an hour and a half. Alright, that's good. Then we're going to slowly close this. Oh, my pan is swimming. There we go. You can see I took the entire setup out of the oven. Now I'm going to lift the flan out of the water bath. Right here. Scoot this over so you can see better. And then, this just came out of the oven, so immediately run your knife along the edges. You see it's already loosened some. It's floating on that caramelized syrup at the bottom. And I'm going to clean the end off, that way it's easier. Turn. Oh, look at how that's moving. So it's already well loosened. Okay, you can see the flan turning as I rotate the pan. So what I was going to do is go all the way around the edges and then give it a couple of turns to make sure it's completely loosened from the sides and the bottom. Alright, Now what you're going to do is keep the flan inside the pan until it cools completely, then we'll flip it onto a flat plate. Look at that, it's very nice. My flan is nice and cool, and now I'm going to flip this over. And it's very runny under there, so cover and then flip quickly. Oops, I didn't like the sound of that. Hopefully it's in one piece. Voila! Oh, it is! And look at how gorgeous that came out. Yay! You can see a little bit of the rind. So if you don't want any rind pieces, you know, you can leave the lime out.